Okay, Ashley, here we go. I've already prepped this metal, scrubbed it, dried it off. So, whoops, I need to get a paper towel. And a paper plate. So I've scrubbed this. Usually the metal has oil on it. So you'll want to take rubbing alcohol and go over it until you don't see any dark. That's pretty good. So you let that dry. It doesn't take long for it to dry. Now for this metal, you don't need this for canvas, wood, or tile, only the metal. So you just need a little bit of this, and it helps to adhere because the metal's not porous. So I'll pour a little bit of this directly onto that metal and evenly spread it out with these sponge brushes. They're cheap. You can buy them by packages. I rinse them out and use them a lot, but then you can just throw them away. Makes it really nice. And I can cover a bigger surface. So we'll let that dry for a minute. Now, this picture was printed mirror image, so because I'm gonna lay it down like this on there, so it has to be mirror image so that it prints the correct way, the way you took it. It's just computer paper. It's so cheap to do these projects because other than having to have a laser print, you need the toner. Other than that, but you can take your flash drive, your photo card, whatever you have, to a printer. You can even email it if you have a printer that you use. We're a small town, so I have a printer that I use that's pretty familiar with what I do. I go to him for bigger prints, but it's cheap. I mean, it's really, really cheap to do. I mean, I can probably get this for like 20 cents, this size. I do have a printer at home, so I'm able to do this size at home. But any bigger, I have to go to a printer. So we'll let this dry a bit. So our next step is going to be this matte medium. You can use Mod Podge, works okay. This is a little more expensive. I prefer this matte medium to that. So what I'll do, this is what the paper plate is for. I will put this on the paper plate. So when you go, you're going to cover both surfaces, the print and whatever surface you're transferring to. You're going to put it on both. You don't want to do a heavy because then it gets clumpy underneath and you get globs of glue and the image won't stick. You also need to remember that you need color. If you have a lot of white in your photograph, it's not going to transfer well because there's no ink to adhere to what you're transferring to. So if you have a lot of white areas, once you try to take this paper off, those white areas will not stick and you'll just expose whatever surface is underneath that you're trying to transfer to. So this appears to be dry. So I usually do the metal first, or my surface, whatever surface I'm transferring onto, I do that first. And you brush this on. You want to have enough to cover your surface, but again, you don't want big clumps of this because what it is, it's just like a glue. So that, it's kind of glary, but that's sufficient. And I shall fix that. So now I'm going to do the same thing to this print. Going to scoot this down a bit. Cover it. This takes a little more. You'll see some of this kind of pull away from that ink, that it doesn't look like it's covered. So just go over it until it's, you can see that there's no areas that have, it'll kind of pool a little bit when you first put this on. Once it gets a little bit damp with the matte medium, it'll start to adhere better. And this is the same process you do no matter what you're transferring onto, other than you, if you're not going to do the metal, you won't need that Joe Sonia stuff. You'll just forget that. You'll forget the alcohol, and you'll just do this. You'll just want to be sure your surface is clean. So, we're going to do face down. This is a little bigger than my metal, so I'm going to try to center that. Whoops, got a little piece of something there. You want to be sure you don't have, you know, any kind of sand or debris or anything on your surface. So I'm going to put this down. It looks pretty good. And now you're going to flatten it. You're going to want to do the best you can to make it as smooth as you can so you don't have ridges or bubbles underneath there. This is a bit bigger. I'm really lucky my neighbor has a fabricating business, an industrial fabricating business up around Chicago, and I do photo work for them, and he cuts these pieces for me, which is really nice. Okay, here's what I was talking about, your squeegee. So you don't want to do real hard, you don't want to press real hard, but you want to take it across your surface to move whatever excess matte medium you have underneath there. There was some. Wipe off when you get it. But you want to be sure that there's some there, I can feel that. Since this is bigger than my metal, it's probably, excess is probably coming out underneath the paper. I can still feel. Again, practice. You can get, usually they have canvas or canvas board that's pretty cheap. Packages, I wouldn't get a very big size. I wouldn't go any bigger than 8 by 10. If you can get a 5 by 7 or even a 4 by 6 to practice this with, so you can get the feel of it, you probably, it'll be fine. And you'll be amazed. You know, it's really nice to be able to make coasters with the tile. And it's, you don't want that slick, shiny tile. You need something that has, that's porous, that'll adhere. That's a place I'm not happy with right there, but we'll see what happens. So I feel as though I got one place there too I don't like, but I can't keep going over it or it'll tear. You have to be very careful because it'll tear, and then you'll leave a little mark. But some of the coolness of this process is that it looks, a lot of times it looks a little vintage, a little old. So there is that first process. Now, we wait, we let it dry. The metal, it takes a little longer to dry. Wood, I've transferred onto tabletops. Wood, it dries fairly quickly, but you want to be sure it's all dry before we go on to the next step. So we'll let this dry and then I'll get back.